Syracuse football is just 3 days away. What are you most looking forward to?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are joined from Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. We're going over depth chart takeaways, exciting things about the season, which is just 3 days away, and the new ACC Outlook after Florida State, let's face it, laid an egg in the season opener against Georgia Tech. Can Syracuse perhaps get to the ACC championship game? Me and Neil Adler are going to discuss on today's show. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, Neil, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on the podcast here. Let's just start off talking about the depth chart that was released just a couple days ago. What stood out to you about it?
Well, first of all, as always, Jackson, thanks for having me on, brother. I appreciate it. I guess my biggest surprise, my least biggest surprise was Kyle McCord, the starting quarterback. I didn't find that there was too many big surprises on there. In terms of the backup quarterback role, either Michael Johnson Jr. or Carlos Del Rio Wilson, kind of figured it'd be one of them. So you got the or in there. So, we'll see. Hopefully Kyle, knock on wood, stays upright. Although, if Syracuse is handling Ohio on Saturday afternoon at the Dome pretty well, you might see, one of them or both of them get some snaps as well. Running back wise, obviously all ACC performer LaQuinn Allen Jr. And then you've got Will Nixon, the transfer, and Yassine Willis, who I'm really high on. He's one of the highest rated high school senior commits. So I think the running back room is great. Wide receiver, I think it was pretty straightforward. Obviously, news broke that Justice Ross Simmons is, from Colorado State, is dealing with a minor injury, so he was left off, and inserted in was Emmanuel Ross, if I'm not mistaken, out of New Jersey. And he, I believe, at least from one of the individual recruiting services, I think On3, he was rated in like the top 120 nationally. So a really nice incoming freshman wide receiver out of New Jersey. So let's see what he gets, what kind of reps he gets. Otherwise, not a lot of stuff. I thought it was interesting, and I know you've talked about it recently. I'm really high on Marcellus Barnes Jr. from Tennessee, 4-star prospect, and I believe he was listed as a potential starter, either him or I think was it Devin Grant?
It was Devin Grant, yeah.
One of the quarterback, and obviously Devin's a proven commodity, transfer from Buffalo, so it'll be interesting to see who gets the reps there. But a couple other guys, I believe, were also listed on the depth chart, as a potential backup. King Joseph Edwards at the edge, who I'm just really high on. I think he's a really nice person and obviously a talented player. So we'll see what kind of reps he gets. Malachi James, who is like the fastest player on the planet, I believe was listed as a kick returner, either him or Pena.
Yeah, I think it's both. They're going to share it.
Right. Other than that, so there were, if we're talking about kind of, freshmen, potentially getting some reps, I believe that Ivan McDaniels was listed as a cornerback, potential backup. And then Brahim Long, another, both 3-star 2024 commits. And I think he was listed as one of the backups at the strong safety position. So, I didn't really see any big surprises on either, the offensive or defensive lines, obviously not at linebacker, just some of those freshmen potentially getting reps, I thought was interesting. And obviously, from the special teams unit, the kicking and punting is all straightforward. So not a ton of surprises. Hopefully guys, remain injury free as we get going. And I'm just excited for the season.
I agree with you. I wasn't too surprised when it came out. And then, my first takeaway was, well, what's up with Justice Ross Simmons? And then it comes out 2 seconds later that he's got a hamstring injury. Hamstring injuries, from personal experience,
not fun.
They suck.
Yeah,
because
you got to take that back slowly.
It's not actually painful. That's the sucky part. It's not a super, I mean, unless it's like a severe one. I mean, I had a minor hamstring pull in high school playing hockey. It just feels tight. You can't move. Yeah. And every time you think you're getting closer to getting better, there's some sort of setback. It's very easy to suffer a setback in that type of injury. So it lingers for weeks and potentially months. So I feel bad for Justice Ross Simmons. And I think the only question I have with it is, well, where is he on the depth chart when he's healthy? Because Fran Brown did say that he might be able to play on Saturday. We don't know. We'll find out soon enough. But was he the wide receiver 2, aside from Umari Hatcher? Or was Umari Hatcher the number 2 receiver no matter what? Because we expected Zeed Haynes would be wide receiver 1. It was just wide receiver 2. We were like,
I mean, it's all kind of splitting hairs at this point. I definitely, I agree with you about hamstrings and want him to get back to full health as soon as possible. Regardless of whether he's a 1 or a 2 or whatever you want to put it semantically, I think that he's in line to, assuming he's fully healthy, to get a good amount of reps. He's a talented receiver, he's a veteran receiver. He's really good. But even with him kind of sidelined, at least for right now, I think the wide receiver room is just, between that and the tight ends, just so much, Hatcher, Gill, Haynes, Meeks, Pena, Emmanuel Ross, obviously a tight end, you got Gadsden, Bellari, Jamie Tremble, a 4-star prospect, incoming freshman, and then certainly guys out of the backfield that can catch the ball too, including Allen. So hopefully Simmons is back, sooner rather than later, but I don't think, especially this first week against an Ohio team that Syracuse should beat, that they're going to necessarily want to rush him back. I'll be interested to see if he gets any reps at all, but I don't think him being out, even if he's out completely, is going to impede Syracuse from winning that game.
I tend to agree with you on that. If Justice Ross Simmons is the deal breaker between Syracuse beating Ohio or
bigger
not,
problems to have.
We got bigger problems, bigger fish to fry. I think Syracuse is going to crush Ohio. I mean, maybe I'm jinxing them. I think they're going to crush them. I
don't think you're jinxing them. Last time I checked earlier this week, it was like 17.5.
Yeah. I think it's going to be 30 plus.
As Fran Brown said, and he's, kudos to him, and he's just a stand-up guy. He said, look, they're a good team. They've won 10 games 2 years in a row, regardless of conference affiliation. But they playing
beat Iowa State last year.
Yeah, no, they're a good team. I think Syracuse will win the game by double digits. Whether they cover the spread, who knows? But, it's, as we were talking about offline, it's just a question of, are there first game jitters? This is Fran Brown's first game as a head coach. He's got, a lot of new assistants who are all really excellent assistants, but they're all doing this for the first time together with Syracuse, and a team that's did have key returnees, but a lot of new faces, whether it's incoming freshmen or guys out of the portal. And as we've talked about, and you've talked about on other great, segments, there's talent across the board, but playing as a team, playing on the field, see how it goes. But I don't necessarily think that Syracuse is going to have a ton of difficulty with the Bobcats, but whether they cover, I guess, I don't even care about that. I'm not a betting man.
Fair enough. I mean, I said this on a Locked On panel. The episode, by the way, is going to air on Thursday on Locked On ACC, that I am the best imaginary bettor there is.
Oh, okay. That's a good skill.
The greatest imaginary bettor. Like, I will think of something in my head and be like, yeah, I think that team's going to cover, or that team's going to win, or that upset's going to happen. And I'm great at that. But the moment I hit the bet button, like I actually bet it, I'm awful. So I'm the greatest imaginary bettor of all time. Tired after lunch? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5-hour energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. College football is back, and it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. You can get it all from Locked On's stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Neil, this is another open-ended question. What are you most looking forward to for this season?
The thing I'm most hopeful for is that Syracuse, like they have the last 2 years, starts out of the gate really well, whether it's 6-0 or 4-0 or whatever. And then they don't fade down the stretch. And you know, to be fair, part of that, at least, you know, certainly last year is injuries and depth issues and quarterback issues, poor Garrett Schrader, and, you know, doing the Wildcat and all that stuff. But yeah, just having a more consistent season throughout. You know, it's just everyone's throwing numbers out there. Oh, Syracuse is going to go 6-6 or 7-5 or 10-2 or 9, whatever. I mean, I think the floor for them is 7-5. I think the ceiling is 12-0. But I mean, 12-0, you have no margin for error. But realistically, 9 or 10 maybe. But again, it boils down to this team under a first-year and first-time head coach with a lot of new assistants, this overhauled roster, talented roster, coming together, gelling, not committing a lot of penalties, executing in all three phases, and avoiding the injury bug. But I do think the team as a whole has more depth than it has had in recent years. But I would just like to see the team start out solid and end solid. You know, but beyond that, yeah, I want to see what Kyle McCord can do. I'm tired of all the conjecture. Is he a top tier quarterback? Is he not? I mean, the dude won 11-1 at Ohio State and had one of the highest efficiency ratings in the country, but they lost to Michigan. And, you know, he didn't throw up crazy big numbers, but he threw up solid numbers. But, you know, just all the nonsense talk right and left. I just want to see him gunsling it to all his talented receivers, both traditional wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs. The running back room's loaded. I think the defense, the secondary is great linebackers. We'll see how both lines do. But I'm just ready to get going. I mean, you know, ever since, and again, I've said this to you offline, and I say this all the time on our social media, I really like Dino Babers as a person. I think he's a stand-up person. And they made bowl games the last 2 years, although he didn't coach this past year. But they went 13-13. They had 1 10-win season. Overall, they weren't relevant nationally in his tenure, and they weren't particularly relevant in the ACC. But again, like the guy's a person, it did, you know, it is what it is. And the excitement over Fran Brown and his staff and what they did in the portal and all the recruiting stuff, it's and a schedule that, again, conjecture, but on paper looks manageable, both non-conference and in ACC. I'm just excited for this to actually start and watch this game on Saturday and see what McCord does and sees, you know, what the offense does and how the team is playing again in all three phases and just winning games. And I'm excited to hear from the guys after the games. And, you know, it sounds like they've got confidence. McCord is a leader for sure. They've got key veterans returning that I think are going to have monster seasons, including Allen and Gadsden and Marlowe Wax and Barron. But, you know, let's see how Deuce does and Devin Gray, you know, all these transfers. There's fun things there. And, you know, it's as you mentioned, you know, Florida State getting upset in Dublin last weekend kind of opens the door a little bit, you know, in the ACC. Obviously, Syracuse was, you know, not projected high, number 12 out of 17 teams, but that's all preseason speculation. Let's see what they do on the field. I think this is a team that if they come together, they've got some tough games, but I think they can win 8 or 9. And I don't know if that probably wouldn't even 9-3 is probably not going to get them into the CFP conversation, but it'd be cool to be ranked in the top 15 and get into a major bowl game. That'd be awesome.
You mentioned the top 15. I think some people might forget that they were a top 15 team in the country just a couple of years ago.
2 years ago.
I mean, at some point they were
when
ranked.
They started out 6-0.
When they were 6-0,
they were
Clemson.
They were inside the top 15.
I think 15. They were 14. They were 14 going on the road to play Clemson.
And then
they lost close to Clemson, so they stayed in the top 25. Right. Then they fell out because of what happened the following week against Notre Dame. I was covering that Notre Dame game in the Dome, and I mean, if the first play of the game's a pick six. I mean, that
was not pretty.
It set the tone.
Yeah, and I think not to go off on a tangent, but again, when they started out 6-0 and were ranked in the top 15, there was a lot of excitement, and then they had that Clemson game, and I think between falling in that game, heartbreaker, and then obviously the Notre Dame, excuse my language, spanking, it just it crushed their momentum. So I think they can be a ranked team. Why not? I mean, if they again, I think they're non-conference. I think going to UNLV could be a tricky one, but the other three, I think they should win. And again, I think their ACC schedule is favorable. I mean, again, this is all speculation. We don't know how these teams they're going to play, how they're going to end up being throughout the year. But no Florida State, no Clemson.
Are we sure? Do we want Florida State now on the schedule?
I still want to beat them, don't you, man?
Don't you want to put Florida State now that maybe they're going to go 0-12 this year? I don't know.
Well, I didn't check this week after they lost to Georgia Tech and Ireland. Did they sue the ACC to get that result reversed? Because
what I heard from Florida State is that they thought it was unfair that another team was allowed to beat them.
Yeah,
so they're suing Georgia Tech for winning the game. That's what they're going to do. Or that's what they're planning on doing. They haven't done it yet, but there's been some rumblings that Georgia Tech was too good of a team for them. So I mean, Georgia Tech might as well be an NFL team. That's not fair. Yeah. Florida State had to play them. And I saw somewhere that they had to go to Ireland to play the game. Georgia Tech was allowed to stay in America.
Did they fly in that morning?
Virtually, while Florida State had to travel all the way to Ireland to play the game.
That's a bummer. I mean, that is unfair.
I get it. I mean,
not cool, bro.
There's a ton of lawsuits potential here. I mean, you have such a great case, Florida State. By the way, I mean, we're going to get to Florida State and Georgia Tech in the ACC Outlook soon, but it couldn't have happened to a more deserving team than Florida. I mean, you talk about karma. Like, I think most people.
That's a little bit of karma.
Yeah, yep. Most people felt bad. I would want to say 99% of people, whether they agree with the decision or not to leave them out of the playoff, felt bad that they didn't make it because they were an undefeated Power 5 champion, and an undefeated Power 5 champion has never been left out. And I think I agreed with the decision to take Bama over them. I agreed with it, but I still felt bad for Florida State because
both things
Florida
can be
Travis
true.
is healthy, they're in.
Right.
They're in over Alabama. It's just what the ruckus they caused after it. It's the fact that they didn't just complain. That then they were like, all right, now we're going to sue the conference. I'm like, all right.
I mean, obviously that's a much larger issue with their lawsuits, with Clemson lawsuits. We'll see how all that stuff shakes out. It was a little bit of karma for me. And I mean, to be honest with you, I'm just kind of like a positive person. So I tend to root for other teams, and whether it was the Big East back in the day or other ACC teams, by and large, when they're not playing Syracuse, just why not? But I ain't gonna lie, brother. I was rooting for Georgia Tech that day.
Oh, me too.
I was also, they deserved to win, and
they were 100% the better team on that day.
Yeah, they were the better team. It's a neutral site game. They both have to deal with that, and they won fair and square.
They punched them in the mouth.
They did. Their line was really good. And, I don't think Florida State's season is over, but it's definitely the margin of error for them to really make inroads, both in terms of getting, like you said, to the ACC championship and into the CFP. It's the margin for error is a lot, shrinks. But, I was cool with that. And now we'll see how Syracuse does with Georgia Tech at the Dome in week 2. That'll be fun.
You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And for Syracuse football fans just like myself, the season is right around the corner, and Syracuse is a 17.5-point favorite to get the W against Ohio on Saturday. You think Syracuse can cover? Well, bet it right now on FanDuel. If you want to play it safer, the Orange's money line is minus 1,100. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and download America's #1 sportsbook. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, so no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. I think we're going to blend what we're excited about and the ACC Outlook here, because I think I'm more excited for the season now that Georgia Tech beat Florida State, because I think it opens the door for another ACC team. Sure. You know, there was a consensus 2 to 3 teams. It was Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. Those were the 3 favorites to win the conference. Now that Florida State lost to Georgia Tech, all right, that's a conference loss. So they're not only just 0-1, they're 0-1 in the conference.
Correct. Yeah.
Clemson has to face Georgia.
Yeah.
So they're probably going to lose. And if they win, if they beat Georgia, then we could just chalk them up as a team that's just, they're going to probably run away with the ACC at that point if they can beat Georgia. But they're probably not. So you're looking at them being 0-1. And I know Florida has the worst schedule in the country. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. But they haven't lost a home opener since the 80s. It's been a long time since they've lost a home opener, and they're slight underdogs to Miami. That's a pick 'em game. You're looking at potentially the top 3 favorites in the conference.
Could all be 0-1. Yeah.
0-1. With one of them having a conference loss.
Right.
I think that opens the door for another team, because you can only have so many losses. It makes me more excited about Syracuse's season because you just do the math. I mean, you can argue that Florida State probably is a better team than Syracuse, but it's math at that point. If Florida State loses 1 or 2 more conference games,
they're done.
If they lose 2 more, they're definitely done. If they lose 1 more, now they're in a dogfight to make the conference championship game.
Right.
So the door kind of opened up. And also with Georgia Tech, I take nothing away from them. And that is going to be a really tough game in week 2. I'm really excited for that one. But Georgia Tech, I don't really take seriously to win the ACC. And the reasoning is not because of Georgia Tech themselves. Their schedule's awful. I don't have it off the top. At the top of my head, I know they play Georgia.
It's a tough schedule.
I think they play Clemson, Notre Dame, Miami, NC State. They have they have maybe the worst schedule in the ACC. I was telling you offline, I think if Georgia Tech and Syracuse swap schedules, that Georgia Tech would have a better chance.
That's fair.
Of making the playoff.
Yeah.
Or making the playoff. But I don't take Georgia Tech seriously enough to actually be a college football playoff contender or even an ACC contender, because their schedule is so bad. So they're going to be one of those good 6 or 7 win teams that obviously is going to be tough for Syracuse. And that's a game that I'm really looking forward to.
Oh yeah. That's if you're asking me the games I'm most excited about, again, obviously this is all on paper, but yeah, I would have said Georgia Tech even before their win over the Seminoles last weekend overseas. Certainly at NC State, which is supposed to be one of the better teams. I believe the season finale is home against Miami.
Yeah.
Again, I think the game at UNLV could be a tricky one. They're a pretty good team, and going to the West Coast, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle traveling out west. I believe do they travel to Cal this year?
Yeah, they do. I was on Q Sports Talk last week.
Yes,
and
you
I
were.
said that the sneaky one that they could lose is at Cal.
Sure.
Because I don't know if Cal's really a great team, but I think going to California is not easy.
When you factor in traveling and the time zone, and all that, I mean, it's a fact. How big of a factor, we'll see. But it's going to be interesting to see that kind of dichotomy, that kind of like thing in terms of not just Syracuse, but ACC teams in general, going from east to west or west to east. And it's like, okay, this team like is really better on paper, but they traveled far away, and did they lose? That could become a factor. And I agree. And I'm pretty sure, again, not that I care about preseason stuff, but Cal was slotted ahead of Syracuse in the preseason poll. I'm pretty sure. Actually,
I don't have it off the top of my head.
They were 10, and they got 2 first place votes, which is pretty interesting. Georgia Tech was 9, they got 1 first place vote. Yeah, they're all, I mean, and obviously all the kind of the usual suspects. But no, I mean the trip to Cal could be tough. Virginia Tech could be a very good team. I don't know how I feel about Pittsburgh. I mean, they're always in bruising battles with Syracuse, but they stunk last year, so we'll see how that goes. But no, there's some fun games on the schedule. Just got to go one game at a time. And I know that's what Fran Brown is preaching. He definitely seems like the type of guy that is just like, I'm focused on this week of practice and this game, and I'm not thinking about anything beyond.
Well, that's the correct mindset to have. I mean,
I agree.
See, here's the thing. Me and you, like, we're not playing the games. We're not coaching the games. We're just talking about it. So we can do what we want. We can look ahead at the schedule.
Correct.
But if you're the head coach of whatever college or pro team or even high school team, I don't care what level you are, you're always kind of focused on what's ahead. Even when I was playing high school hockey or my competitive travel days earlier in my life, I was only looking to I can only look so far ahead. I would only look at like maybe 1 or 2 games, and you could never really take an opponent lightly. No. So I think Ohio is a good test to start, because it's what I would put that in the category of, it's a should win game. Like, you should win this game. And not only should you win, you should probably win by a pretty big margin. You're a 17.5 point favorite at home against a group of 5 team, but they are a 10-win group of 5 team the last 2 years.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
All right, here's your first obstacle. Like, it's not really a challenge, it's an obstacle. Let's assume that they pass it with flying colors, and I think they will. I think Syracuse is going to win by 30 plus.
Let's do it.
Then you got Georgia Tech in week 2, and after they just beat Florida State, man, oh man, oh man, oh man. They could be ranked.
Yeah, but I think they've got Georgia State at home this week.
They're going to win.
So if they're 2-0, having beat the preseason number 10 team, I would assume they'll be ranked.
I think so.
I would assume.
It pains me to say this, but for every Syracuse fan out there, we need Florida State to roll Boston College. We need them, kill them this week, because if Florida State does, I think they play on Monday night. If they do really well against Boston College and they spank them, I think they will, honestly, because they're going to be mad about what happens. That Georgia Tech win looks a little bit better, which strengthens their case of being ranked. And then if you do the process of, I think it's like the associate property, whatever it is, of math,
right?
If Syracuse then beats Georgia Tech, the win looks better because Georgia Tech's win over Florida State looks better. So it's kind of like a weird dichotomy. Style points matter. So, how you do versus one team and how that team fares against that team, it all plays a factor. We got to root for Florida State this week. It pains me to say, because I hate Florida State now, but we got to root for them. We need them to crush Boston College so that Georgia Tech is a ranked team. And then Georgia Tech comes to the Dome in week 2 and we beat them. How about that?
Cool. I like your plan, and you're way too smart for me. I have no idea what you were just talking about, but it's cool. I'm just kidding. I know what you're saying. I do. Yep. I mean, it's, we, like you said, as
was it the math terminology?
I don't know. You're smart and I'm old. So I don't know. It's, we can, as commentators, writers, or whatever, we can look ahead and crystal ball things and look at all these scenarios. I mean, for me, sure, I'll be keeping my eye on what other ACC teams are doing, just like I did last weekend. But, I just want to see Syracuse play well, avoid injuries, win games, be exciting. The fan base clearly is excited. I really hope that there's a ton of people there on Saturday. We'll see.
I won't be there on this Saturday, but I do believe, because I'm scheduled to go back to Syracuse on Monday, that I will be, barring something, barring something, I think I'm going to be at that Georgia Tech game. That one, I'm licking my chops on that one. I'm
nice. So you're going to paint your whole body orange and
no. I'm not that big of a knucklehead. No. Sorry. You know what? I'm sorry that I called those folks knuckleheads, but it's all meant in good humor.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you're painting your face. You're going shirtless or whatever. Like what? I mean, I see the people in Buffalo when it's negative 10 degrees in January for a playoff game. They're shirtless jumping off tables. Big fan and all, but I'm not going to do that. Never
was my jam, even when I was a student at Syracuse in the late 90s. Yeah, not my thing, but if you want to be naked and paint yourself in minus 5 degree wind chill factor in Buffalo, more power to you.
If you can handle it, sure. I mean, I personally can't paint my face. I've done it before. Not for a game, but I put face paint on and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
I end up getting itchy and I just scratch it.
Right.
And it looks terrible. And it gets all over my fingers. Yeah. And I'm just I basically swore off painting my face. Or just painting any part of I'll paint on a canvas.
There you go. There you go. Well, the Georgia
Neil, thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course, my friend, and enjoy the Georgia Tech game. It should be a good one. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.